Welcome to A Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes and I'm flying solo. This is a weekend bulletin from Axon. We're going to be looking at the upcoming Rangers game. There's been a few issues obviously through the international break that have come to light that Neil Lennon is going to have to deal with. So let's have a wee look at what you think will be Celtic's typical lineup against Steven Gerrard's Rangers. I'll give you what I think and you can give me as many comments as possible because this is a short weekend bulletin. I'm on my own and so I'm relying on you guys and girls to get involved. But interestingly enough, Celtic were involved in some action the other day there. Bounce game against Motherwell yesterday where we won 2-1 up at Lennoxtown. The goals coming from that man Lee Griffiths and Anthony Ralston. So Anthony Ralston is still with the club. He's still part of that first team squad. We've mentioned Ralston a few times actually on A Celtic State of Mind. And, we were looking at whether or not he was still part of the thinking behind Neil Lennon's first team squad. He effectively would be the third choice right back, wouldn't he? After Elhamed and Frimpong, who I don't actually think is a right back. So Ralston's still in there and he scored a goal, so fair play to Ralston. He's got a lot of first team experience with Celtic and St Johnstone under his belt, as well as a short spell at Dundee United. So I don't know if he's still classed as a potential for first team action this season, but good to see him part of that, as were other first teamers, Scott Bain, Stephen Welsh, Sorrow, Ismaila Sorrow was in the team, Scott Brown, Karamoko Dembele and Olivier Encham, as well as the referenced Lee Griffiths, who scored again. That's what he's good at. And of course, Laxalt also got a full 90 minutes under his belt, so that was good. So does that make any difference to the way that you're thinking about the Celtic lineup? Well, I think a few interesting things there actually. Sorrow getting game time. Laxalt, who obviously played a full game. Do you throw a new signing into a Derby Day debut? It's happened in the past several times. We did speak about some famous debuts against Rangers. It's a big game to throw a player into. I don't think it will faze Laxalt in any way, shape or form. He's played at the top level on an international basis. We signed him from AC Milan. He can handle this. Absolutely. And in actual fact, he does make my starting lineup, my starting 11, which I'll read through in just a second. Dembele, that was an interesting one, wasn't it? Because we did speak about how the youngster was looking to move on. I'm delighted that Celtic kept a hold of him during that transfer window. And I also reckon that, he's one of these players that Neil Lennon's going to turn around. I think we've seen it already. We've seen Neil Lennon's man management skills with Lee Griffiths, both last season and this season. He's got him back into the team a couple of times. He started scoring goals last season. Exactly the same thing has happened this season. And I don't know if Neil Lennon gets enough credit actually for his man management ability because he's done it with Griffiths. He's also done it with Encham, who played yesterday in the bounce game as well. Encham wanted to leave this time last year and went to the French press to say as much. Thankfully, Lenny turned him round, got him playing again, and he's a player. He's a really technically gifted player when he's on form, is Olivier Encham. And I'm looking at Dembele. We were talking about the link to various wingers over the transfer deadline period, and when that window was open, quite a number of wingers was mentioned. And you don't know how much interest we had in some of these guys that were referenced. But, Karamoko Dembele started the season off really, definitely behind James Forrest and probably behind Frimpong also. Frimpong's come in, and at the moment, due to Forrest's injury, he's the first choice on the right-hand side in an offensive sense. But Dembele did start off on the bench. He's disappeared from view recently. And obviously the talk was that he was looking to move out of Celtic Park. It didn't happen. Now he's got a game under his belt, albeit a friendly, a bounce game. Will he be in contention for a place on the bench? I don't think so, but it is good to see him back in action. The goals scored against Motherwell were from that man Lee Griffiths and the forgotten man Tony Ralston. So well done to Ralston. Now, when I named my team that I was thinking about last week, Obviously, there was issues with Christie being selected. There was issues with Edouard being selected as well. And, I don't think Edouard will start due to the fact that he'll be in isolation. He'll return to the country the night before the game. It's not an ideal preparation for him, although he is the star man, absolutely. But Beaton, I'd kind of written off Beaton's involvement in the Rangers game, and then he pops up and plays for Israel against Scotland. And, he did say that he went against the club's wishes and he wasn't answering the phone to Neil Lennon. However, as he put himself into contention for the Rangers game, it had, a couple of very good games at the back for Celtic, very composed. He's got that experience and, he's going to make it onto my bench, and I'll explain my decision certainly as we move on. What kind of concerns do we have? I mean, let's be totally honest here. We can't go into any game and say, we've no concerns about this player or that player. There's some handy players there in Rangers' side. They will be Celtic's main challengers this season, absolutely no doubt about it. I've bigged up Hibs. I like Jack Ross and John Potter at Easter Road. And what I've said is they obviously will be pushing to be Scotland's second force at this moment in time. But Rangers, I don't fear any of their players, of course, but we need to be aware of Borna Barisic, I think, at left back, and James Tavernier at right back. I think that says it all, actually. For me, they're the two most effective players. You've also got Ryan Kent, who we need to be very wary of, I think, because, I don't think he's got the temperament to be a top-class footballer, which is probably why he's playing for Rangers and in Scottish football at this stage of his career, moving on from Liverpool. However, he's one of these guys who might pop up if he can remain composed, that is. So he's probably the third player. But the way that I've set up my Celtic side is with Barisic and Tavernier in mind. John Beaton is going to be officiating the game. Now, does that surprise us? Well, I had a great conversation actually yesterday with Jim Orr, the playwright, and Jim has written various plays, famously Bend It Like Bratback. He's working on Bend It Like Bertie, about the one and only Bertie Auld, so I'm looking forward to that. But Jim and I were speaking about how things happen in Scottish football that actually don't surprise you because we almost expect it. And John Beaton is taking charge of the Celtic Rangers game, and that's on the back of obviously the infamous appearance of Beaton after a Rangers victory at Ibrox. Beaton appears in a Rangers boozer getting selfies, and obviously quite happy with the result. However, even despite that, he is going to be the man with the whistle in charge of the game, and that's a bigger concern for me than any of the Rangers players, to be honest with you. I've already spoken out against some of the standard refereeing so far this season. The games in particular for Celtic have been against Dundee United. It was a shocking performance by the ref, which resulted in actual fact in Edouard being injured. And of course Edouard missed the European game as a result of being kicked all over Tannadice. And that's down to the referee allowing it to happen. And in the St Johnstone game, the standard was absolutely appalling. Again, I've never seen so many tackles go unpunished from one team. Davidson, for example, 2 red card offences. Frimpong kicked all over McDermott Park. And, that was partly the reason why the game was so close right up to the end, because not only were they defending in numbers, but they were booting Celtic players all over the pitch. And so already the officiating has come in for criticism on a Celtic state of mind. And John Beaton's the man in charge, so there's another element that we need to deal with. Before I run through the team that I think we should be playing, I'll run through some of the suggestions and the comments that are coming through. You can comment on Facebook, Twitter and via YouTube if you are. Follow us, so follow myself in a Celtic State of Mind on Facebook and Twitter, and on YouTube, the YouTube channel is A State of Mind, so get subscribing on there. It's all free of charge, and as I say, it's the Axon Bulletin, which normally runs from Monday to Friday, but we'll be doing one today and tomorrow as well, because there's no football to look forward to. Because I'm doing it myself, there may be a few refreshment breaks, so apologies in advance. Liam McLaughlin, you've just said Barkas, and I agree with you, he is the first name on the team sheet these days. despite the fact that, it wasn't all that long ago that somehow in the Scottish media they were criticising Barkas, our £4.5 million goalkeeper who we signed from AEK Athens. And he certainly is one of these guys. I can just see in him that, he's becoming a real fan's favourite. And I'm not going to liken him to Arthur Boruc, but I think he will really love and relish the challenge against Rangers when it comes around. Michael Jensen. Michael is commenting on YouTube, and you don't think that Ralston can cut it, and you're unconvinced. I do remember some of his early performances, Michael, looking at him, and after we had seen the introduction of Kieran Tierney on the other side of the pitch, it was going to be difficult for anyone to really make any kind of impact to that level of KT. So Ralston came into the team probably not with as much pressure, to be fair, but if you're going to impress us as Celtic fans after we've seen Kieran Tierney's performances, then, you're going to have something about you. And, correct me if I'm wrong, but it was Ronnie Dyler that gave him his debut. I was quite impressed. A lot of people say to me he's a journeyman player, not Celtic class. I've heard all of these things. On a domestic level, I think that, I don't think he's definitely the answer. I don't think he's a first choice at Celtic. But at the moment, we don't have, a plethora of right backs. He's still a young player. And is he worth keeping as backup? Yeah, I think he probably is. I think he played maybe 40 games for St Johnstone, 30 or 40 games for St Johnstone domestically. He's got European experience for Celtic. Of course, there was the infamous incident with Neymar. I don't know if that's aged very well, to be fair, but I don't know. He's just, a lot of Celtic fans seem unconvinced by him. But, it's good to see the boy playing. He's certainly not been loaned out during that transfer window. So we'll see how that develops for him. And Hugh Connolly comes in to say, keep up the great content. Well, Hugh, it's an absolute pleasure. Hence the reason I'm here on a Saturday afternoon, just to put out a Celtic bulletin through a Celtic State of Mind. We're asking, how should Neil Lennon line up against Rangers? We've got a few things to consider that have been completely out of our control. Now, Mark O'Donnell, you're also commenting on YouTube. Get the feeling that Lenny wants Griff starting, and depending on Edouard, who I think won't make it, it'll be a Yeti with Klamala sub to swap with either. Again, we have spoken about this, the way that the situation has worked. Did I expect us to have 4 strikers all vying for 1 or 2 jerseys? We don't always play with the 2 up front, of course. No, I certainly did not. And it's a great position for Neil Lennon to be in. I've got to say, you've got the hard working application of Patrick Klamala, which has put him into the thoughts of the gaffer when he's picking this side. You've got Edouard, who is by far and away the classiest out of all the players that we have in that position, although he hasn't been at his best, and he's, the manager has admitted that. I'm not convinced Eddie will start just due to the circumstances. Yeah, he's got the positive for the virus first and foremost. How's that affected him physically? I know he's came out on social media saying that he's okay, but it can take it out of you. Perhaps energy wise, your levels may be affected as a result of the virus. I'm sure they will be. He's not training the way or to the intensity that he normally would. So I don't think Edouard would start. But even a not fully fit Edouard should certainly be on the bench. You've then got Griffiths. Do I get the feeling that he's going to start? I do actually, Mark. I agree with you. I think that Griffiths will start. I really do. He's coming at the perfect time. And there was quite a few discussions throughout the season about Lee Griffiths, and to the point, and I can understand why, but a few Celtic fans were telling us, let's stop talking about Griffiths and Rogic. They're done. They're finished. They're history. But I didn't accept that. I thought Rogic was on his way out like everybody else, for £4 million to Qatar. But, that broke down. So it's through circumstances that he's back in the plan. I think Neil Lennon has worked very long and hard with Lee Griffiths. And it's now time for Lee to repay him and to repay the Celtic support, all the faith that we've had in Griff. And I would just love to see him starting. I really would. Even if he's got 60 minutes in his legs, I'd love to see him starting. Again, Ayeti, we don't know how fit he's going to be. He's missed a few weeks after pulling up directly after scoring a goal against Livy. So Ayeti, he would be a starter, wouldn't he, if he was fit? But I'm unsure if he's going to be fit. The two fittest, I think, strikers are going to be Klimala and Griffiths, but it all comes down to whether or not we actually play two strikers. I think we will play two up top, but it may not be two strikers. So, Mark, thanks for your comments. Liam McLaughlin, let's have a look at your full team then. Barkas and goals, you're going for Ayer, Duffy and Beaton. Interesting, very interesting, but I can see why. You've got Frimpong out right, Laxalt out left, Brown and McGregor weighing Cham in front of them with Eddie and Griffiths. Brilliant. I mean, it's a great side. It's very similar to the one I've chosen as well, Liam. And you've commented there that Ajeti would play if Eddie is out, and I think there is a big chance that Eddie will be out. And everybody commenting on Facebook, I really appreciate your comments. I don't know who's commenting unless you go through the very short registration process through StreamYard. They are a trustworthy source, so don't hesitate to do that, and I can see your avatar and I know who I'm speaking to. Also, another comment on Facebook, Ajeti and Eddie up top. If Ajeti not fit, it has to be Wee Lee. Well, this is a big question really. We've got four strikers there. Edouard is ill at the moment. Ajeti's coming back from an injury. Griffiths is trying to regain some fitness, hence the reason why he played and scored against Motherwell in the closed doors game. But every game's closed doors these days, isn't it? So, Griffiths is coming back as well, and the fittest striker we've got at the club is Patrick Klimala, and he's the guy that's shown all the dedication to his conditioning, and fair play to him. And the determination that he showed against St Johnstone to score that second goal was very impressive indeed. Will he start against Rangers though? I don't think he will. Now, Michael, you're commenting on YouTube. Got to be a 3-5-1-1. Barkas, Duffy, Julien, Ayer, Frimpong, Brown, McGregor and Cham, Laxalt, Ajeti and Eddie. Only changes from that team that I've picked, Michael, is I've got Griffiths starting up front and I've got El Yunusi just off him, and I know he's not played brilliantly in the last couple of games, El Yunusi, but I think this is the type of game, as I said at the top of the show there, my biggest concerns are the referee before we look at the Rangers side, but I do rate Barisic. I think he's an excellent player. And I know some of the comments that have been made about Tavernier in relation to how good a signing he's been. There's absolutely no doubt he's a very influential player in that side. So I would need to try and nullify both of those players by getting Frimpong and Laxalt just to run at them. Like most people on the show here, I'm relying on video footage to see Laxalt, and I've been watching a lot of the video footage of him playing internationally, and then he looks a player. He looks like a strong runner. He's got a trick about him. He's a dribbler. He creates a lot of chances. He likes a strike, and I just think him down the left, Frimpong down the right, would scare the life out of any fullbacks. But it also nullifies one of the main threats, which is the fullbacks in this Rangers side. As I say, the only changes I've got from that team, Michael, on personal note, is Griffiths to start with El Yunusi just off his shoulder, so not starting with two out and out strikers. Barca boy would love to see Klimala start for the pressure and closing down of their backline. Well, actually, when you look at it, if you start off with Frimpong and Laxalt down both sides and the running of Klimala through the middle, similarly with Griff does that as well. He's a nuisance to the backline. So it is going to be very interesting to see. And of course, we will also continue in our discussions in relation to Ryan Christie, whether or not he's going to be playing. It seems very unlikely at this moment in time due to the quarantine rules that we were reminded this morning by Big Sutty that obviously we subscribe to those rules. We signed up to those rules and we've got to abide by them. It seems quite harsh. I've got to say, it does seem quite harsh on Christie under the circumstances, having kept to all the rules and through no fault of his own, he's having to quarantine due to someone else proving positive. So very unfortunate, but I'm not going to write him into my team because I think it's very unlikely that he will be considered for selection. On Facebook, we've got Barkas, Julien, Duffy and Ayer, Frimpong, Laxalt, Brown, McGregor and Cham, Griffiths and Ayeti. Again, very similar to my side, although I don't have Ayeti starting. I've got El Yunusi. Under normal circumstances, I would have Ayeti. I think he's absolutely outstanding. My first two, if everybody was fit at this moment in time, would be Ayeti and Eduard. So this is all down to who's going to be fittest, who's going to be ready for the game. Now, Tony Hutton, welcome to the show. Tony, great to hear from you. And Cham is good when on form. The form seems to be the problem. Doesn't do it often enough. You know, this is the thing, Tony, I totally agree with that, because when you see him, he can look like technically the best midfield player that we've got. He can do things that no one else on the park can do for Celtic. Some of the chances that he creates, you know, the passing ability is incredible, but it's one of these ones, I'm not going to say he's a 4 or a 9, but he's very inconsistent, isn't he? And some stats might come along and say, well, he's not, and here's the stats. But to my casual eye, I think he is inconsistent, and when he's good, he's very, very good. So it's a big game. He's played plenty of games against Rangers. He's been involved in victories against Rangers, and that's maybe why Lenny will consider him as a starter. Patrick Murphy via YouTube would go with Barkas, Ilhamid, Duffy and Julien, Frimpong and Laxalt as the wing backs, Brown and McGregor in the engine room. Now there's an interesting one as well, Turnbull, Eduard and Griffiths. Now obviously Turnbull would be taking the place of Encham in my side. I can see why. Domestically, I don't think a Rangers game would faze him in any way, shape or form. He won't have an issue with that. And it wouldn't surprise me, I've got to say, it would not surprise me if he started. So Turnbull, a very, very good option in that area of the pitch. Eduard and Griffiths, I'd love to see it. I'd love to see Eduard and Griffiths starting the game, but I don't think Eduard will be ready. We're going to have to be very careful with Eddie. You know, he is... you know, at the moment recovering from a very unpredictable and serious virus at this moment in time. And, you know, after that broke and we discussed it on the show, I went away and reflected on the fact that we were focusing on the Rangers game, and I hope that, you know, people realise that my first thought is about the health of the player as well. Maddie Haston on YouTube, Ayeti and Griff up top. Again, you know, we've not seen that yet, have we? No, we haven't, because Griffiths has only played 15 minutes first team football. And, you know, the prospect of either Griffiths or Eduard with Ayeti developing a partnership is one that, you know, I'm very excited about. I think that our first two picks under normal circumstances would be Eduard and Ayeti. As I say, Griffiths comes into those plans because we know what he can do. Klamala has worked his way into the plans as well and is a great option on the bench. And so Beaton, it's going to be, I just hope that the focus isn't on the you know, the decisions of the referee on a week on Saturday, because obviously I have my concerns. I've got my concerns, and I don't mind saying it. When a referee after a victory at Ibrox, you know, almost celebrates with fellow Rangers fans, it's a deep concern. You wonder where else on the planet that would be allowed, but we'll just reward them with another Rangers game. Hugh Conley, welcome back to the show, Hugh. I still think with the situation, Lenny could shock everyone and play Griffiths and Klamala up front. Well, it would be a risk, Hugh, I know, but he's not averse to it, is he? Shocking us with his team lines. And I'm a big Lenny fan. I'm a massive Neil Lennon fan, and he's been through this as a player and as a manager several times. And, you know, I trust that the team that he picks will be the right team on the day. The team that I'm picking is my suggestion, my predicted 11, not what I think Neil Lennon will choose. Michael Quinn reckons that we definitely start with Griffiths and Eddie if fit. Laxalt in for Taylor. Beaton with Duffy and Ayer. Well, Beaton was kind of out of the plans last week, wasn't he? And then he pops up and plays for Israel. And I think he shocked everybody, Neil Lennon included. So, yeah, he's back in the plans. And I'm looking at, let's run through my team then. And I'm looking at my team. Would he start? He would be on the bench for me. So Barkas, he's a first pick every single week. Brilliant. He's come in. He got his usual criticism from the Scottish media. He seems cool as a cucumber, even when he makes kind of mistakes, it doesn't seem to affect him. I don't think the occasion will affect him. It's going to be a very unusual occasion to be playing Rangers with no fans. I mean, I know that Celtic have had to play them in the past with no fans, with no Celtic fans, and with very few Celtic fans due to the decision makers at Ibrox. But no fans at all. It's just toe to toe. Do Celtic have a better squad? Do Celtic have a better starting 11 than Rangers? Yeah, 100%. Do Celtic have a better manager than Rangers? Well, absolutely. The Rangers manager's never won a thing in management. Not a single trophy has he won. And Neil Lennon has won numerous titles. And so, yeah, absolutely, as a player and as a manager. But if you just want to look at the managerial honours, then, you know, Gerrard's still a rookie. He's never won a thing. So we've got the better players. We've got the better manager. Home advantage, does it exist? I still think it does. You're still playing at your home ground. There's no fans there, but you're still playing at your home ground, a place where you're more familiar with. So yeah, we've got that. There's no fans there, which is unfortunate. Where do Rangers get an advantage? John Beaton. That's their advantage, and that's my concern. So Barkas starts for me. I'm playing with three centre-halves, and I think that what we had before Duffy came in was with Julian and Ayer. They were your first picks. Didn't have a great day at the office against Kelly. And after that game, Ayer was dropped. There was then the speculation that linked him to AC Milan. That speculation was confirmed by Maldini, who said that he was one of many players on a shortlist. Did it unsettle him at all? Was his performances affected? I know many Celtic fans who aren't that impressed with him anyway, but I do like Ayer. I think that there is a partnership between him and Julian, but I also think that since Duffy arrived, that Ayer's more solid as a defender. As much as I love the big runs, the big galloping runs, 40, 50 yards by Ayer, we don't see as many of them since Duffy came in. I think Duffy is talking him through games. I think the experience of Duffy is doing Ayer the world of good. The question then would be, do you throw Julien in after being out for several weeks with a back injury? He didn't play against Motherwell to get him fitness. There was a suggestion that he may have done. Well, if you don't put him in, you've got Elhamed and you've got Beaton. Elhamed, who you can trust. I think he's particularly useful when Frimpong is playing, because Frimpong's defensive duties, I think, are lacking. But Frimpong's got to start because of the threat he has offensively. So even with that in mind, and with the fact that Elhamed's great cover for Frimpong, I'm going to start with Julien, Duffy and Ayer as my three at the back. Laxalt, as I've already mentioned, I'm going to give him his debut down that left, running at Tavernier. Frimpong down the right, likewise with Barisic. Try and nullify the two fullbacks. And, there's a lot of talk about Rangers winning the midfield battle in some games last season, League Cup final, and then obviously in December as well when they beat us at Celtic Park. Brown and McGregor in the engine room, they're the guts, they're the legs that we've got in there. And with Encham in front of them, he's the technician, he's the one that's going to be linking midfield to forward. And the two up top would be Griffiths with Elyounoussi just playing off him. Why would I say that? Well, Elyounoussi for me started off as our best option on the left. Then he had a number of performances where I started wondering if he was a left-sided player. We moved him inside after some performances that he had for Switzerland. He obviously scored in Europe, and then he's played pretty well for a couple of games after that. Kind of gone off the boil over the last game and a half, but I think in this game, due to the fitness issues that we have with Edouard and Ajeti, I can't see Griffiths and Klimala starting. I reckon Elyounoussi will start up there. And had Christie been allowed to, he'd be the guy that would start up there. So on the bench, we've got Bain, Ajeti, Klimala, Edouard, three strikers. Rogic, Beaton, Elhamed, Turnbull and Taylor. Beaton being the player that I bring in for Sorrow, who I named last week. And why? Because he's fit. He's obviously fit because he's played for Israel. So let's have a look at some of your other some of your other your comments. Tony Hutton, stop the 10 is in full steam ahead mode, Paul. You know, I try my best, Tony. I try my best not to be paranoid, not to come across as a paranoid Celtic supporter. Some say we weren't paranoid enough, Tony, but yeah, I do have my concerns, and you know that he is going to be the man in charge. I hope that our experienced players, you know, Shane Duffy, Scott Brown, McGregor, get on top of him right from the kick-off. Don't give him an inch to move. Don't give him any breathing space whatsoever, and let him know that he's in a game, and you know there won't be any of the shenanigans that we've maybe seen against Dundee United and Johnson this season. John McGackie, only in Scotland would a supporter of a club get to referee one of their games. And, you know, again, we've spoken about it on A Celtic State of Mind. The argument would be that the vast majority of referees will either support Celtic or Rangers, granted. But also it's difficult again, you know, because if they're refereeing another game that could affect points for Celtic or for Rangers, then, you know, there would be this unconscious bias, as John Barnes spoke about on a previous episode of Axom. Of course it exists, and it exists in refereeing as well, without a shadow of a doubt. Cathal Tonelli at 3511, Barkas. We've then got Ayer, Duffy and Julian. Totally agree with you. Frimpong, Calmac, Brown and Chamlick Salt. Myself as well. Griff and Paddy. So the only one change from the team that I've got, you're playing Klamala, whereas I've got El Yunusi. If you play Klamala up there, absolutely, put El Yunusi on the bench. He's a great option there. Plays a few different positions. And we still have, obviously, Edouard and Ayeti, should any of the two forwards have an off day or get injured. Tommy Cruikshanks agrees that Klamala and Griffiths should start up front with Eddie on the bench. Yeah, he's not doing it just now, Edouard, but yeah, I think Lenny actually spoke about that, didn't he? He said that he'd been affected with some of the speculation that was flying about. He's a Celtic player and he needs to just knuckle down now and get on with it, really. But obviously, since then, we've had the news that he tested positive for COVID. So we hope that first and foremost that he's in the best of health, and if he is and he's able to join the squad, then I reckon he will be on the bench, absolutely. IH decorating after El Hamid's performance against Scotland. I'd be very tempted to put him at left wing back. Yeah, he played excellently out there, didn't he? Don't think like Salt has played many games of late, which is probably why he played a full 90 minutes against Motherwell. Just to get some minutes into those legs. I'm going for like Salt, simply because what does the fixture really mean to him? You know, he's not one of these players that will be affected by the build-up. Or have an association with, you know, previously with one club or the other. So he comes in, he's a big game player, he signs for Celtic, he plays a game. And sometimes I think that's what, you know, is a benefit often of bringing players from overseas, is that although they've got to know the magnitude of the game, and who better to tell them about that than Neil Lennon and the captain Scott Brown, I just don't think it would faze him, which is the reason I'd put him in. Fitness-wise, you're absolutely right, and we've tried to get 90 minutes in his legs yesterday, so we shall wait and see. Owen McGrandles reckons that we have to play two up front, and let's hope they attack Tavernier, as he is weak in his defending. I think he is, and that again goes back to like Salt. I'd have him running Tavernier ragged, even if it's just for 60 minutes, you know, just run at him. Frimpong, run at Barisic, nullify their threat. Fatboy Slim, Dembele, any chance this year? It's a good question, isn't it? I mean, he started off on the bench for Celtic this season, which meant he was one of the first 20 players on a team sheet at 17 years of age. That you know, you've got to say that's some achievement. His rise through the ranks at Celtic has been something that has been well documented. There's never been so much hype about him since Islam Farouz. Never ever thought that we would be speaking about the two of them in the same breath in relation to departing Celtic too soon, and I really do hope that Dembele stays a Celtic player. Will he get games this season? I think that what's happened before is that players have been written off by supporters, myself included, but Neil Lennon has managed to work with them and get them back into his plans. And he knows, looking at the right-hand side of that park between, the beginning of October right through to the end of December, we could really benefit from having another right-sided player. James Forrest is injured, as we all know. I think 6 weeks out with a fracture. You've got Frimpong firing on all cylinders, but you look at the treatment that he took, against St Johnstone, and it was just, move after move was breaking down because he was getting booted all over the park. If he gets injured, we're kind of struggling out there. You then play El Hamid, who isn't, El Hamid's so adaptable, but, he isn't naturally an offensive player, even though his cross was excellent for Griffiths to open the scoring against St Johnstone. So Dembele, it would be for the benefit of the squad, the wider squad, if he did come in and get some game time. Absolutely, no doubt about it. So Stephen Forbes, welcome back, Stephen. It's always welcome. You're always welcome on the podcast and on the broadcast. 1 week from now, we could be 2 points clear at the top with a game in hand, and I've put a marker down for this season. We're long overdue a champion's performance against them, and I'm confident we'll get one. Well, absolutely, we are, aren't we? We were getting used to the 5-1s at one point, weren't we? It seemed like every time we played them, it was an easy game, and I don't like to give credit just for credit's sake, but they've been a much harder opponent since Steven Gerrard took over. Absolutely no doubt about it. And obviously the League Cup final, we won, which is the main thing. But it was a tough game. It really was a tough game. They beat us at Celtic Park, albeit we missed a penalty. And sometimes we talk about the last Celtic Rangers game that Beaton was the referee in at Ibrox, a 1-0 game. And looking back on that goal that McGregor scored, it could have been a 1 each and we get away from Ibrox. Maybe we're an undeserved point, but we don't get beaten the game. And it's similar at Celtic Park. We miss the penalty. Christie misses the penalty. But they have beaten us a few times now, and they are a challenge. And I think that Celtic, if they play to our full capabilities, have the players. We definitely have the players, and I do think we have the manager. People might disagree with that. Some of the changes that Lenny's made tactically, substitute-wise, have won us games this season, and Gerrard's never won a thing, so we do have the manager. Fatboy Slim would be worried if we go one up top. And going back to your point, Stephen, we were told we would be 11 points behind Rangers. That was a narrative, wasn't it? And it's not quite worked out like that. And Stephen Kenneth, 88, welcome back to the show, Stephen. You're commenting on Twitter, John Beaton appointed a ref for the derby next week. Thoughts, or does it matter who the ref is? I think it does. I do often get the Jock Stein quote regarding about, if you're good enough, you win the game regardless of the referee. That I'm obviously paraphrasing. And again, I don't buy into that. There's plenty of other comments that Mr. Stein made around about that time about the officiating. And there's plenty of players I've spoken to who were under the tutelage of Jock Stein, who also speak along those lines in terms of the fact that he knew we were up against it, regardless of who was refereeing back then. But there are some worse than others at this moment in time. Here's a question for you that may be a difficult one. Who do you reckon would be the best man to manage that? Now, who would be the most balanced referee to referee that Celtic Rangers game? Give me your opinions on that. That'd be an interesting one. Stephen Forbes, Beaton's decision to play for Israel against Scotland could have backfired with his injury record, but as with his recent club form, he impressed again. Will Neil Lennon start him against Rangers? Would it surprise you, Stephen? Would it surprise you? Beaton is a go-to player for Lenny, isn't he? Just as Johnny Hayes was previously. One of the guys that Lennon can rely on. You can play him centre half. We all kind of consider Beaton as a centre half now. Obviously came into the club as a midfielder. He can play in the midfield, and he's so cool on the ball. What you've got when he plays is, he is a ball player. He's got the distribution. You've got Ayer, who's got the legs. He likes to run with the ball, as I've said before. And then you've got Duffy, who does a big bit of the kind of ugly work, the defensive duties a lot of the time. Julien again is another guy who loves to spray the passes all around the park. So what are you getting if you bring Beaton in at the loss of Julien? Is Julien a first pick? When fit, I think he is. Julien came into the starting 11 and impressed. that form continued against Scotland. And yeah, it certainly could have backfired. Absolutely no doubt about it. Now, Van, you are commenting on YouTube. We've had several games with home fans only, but to my knowledge, never no fans at all. Strange occasion, but could suit the likes of Laxalt, Barkas and a Yeti to go and play without that added pressure. I think that's what I was talking about before, Van, in relation to a player coming in with no knowledge of the fixture, no added pressure on there. And, they go in and they perform well. And I think that can work in your favour with Laxalt. The DJ of choice, Eddie, can he play one day after getting rid of the Rona? He will need to recuperate. Zlatan is still trying to get back his fitness after 3 weeks of having it. No, you're absolutely right. And I think as football fans often, we lose a bit of the old focus, don't we? We're just talking about the Rangers game. But if you've been cooped up and isolating for a few weeks or 7 days or 10 days, 14 days, it's going to affect you, isn't it? Your energy levels, never mind your fitness levels. Neil Linus, must be a fast start to pin their defenders back. Let's play with pace. People might say that this is an old-fashioned kind of thing to adopt, but that's exactly what I was saying, Neil. Go with Frimpong, go with Laxalt, get them, actually attacking the channels and nullifying the two fullbacks, who I reckon are two of the three best players in the Rangers side, the other one being Kent as well. Now, Maddie Haston thinks that we're going to win 4-0. What do you reckon then? What do you reckon the score will be? We don't actually know how many players will be out. MMP disagrees with me in relation to Ncham, who I've got starting. You disagree with that. We've got some good options in there, haven't we? You could even play El Yunusi in there, but Turnbull seems to be a very popular choice to be playing in that position as well. Kenny Wilson, welcome to the show, Kenny, big Celtic fan, and you're commenting on YouTube. First time in a while. We need to adapt. Physically, they have had the upper hand lately. They have, haven't they? And I sometimes think, think back to the times where they have had the upper hand, and you look at the players that we've got. I think Duffy's going to be a big part of that, Kenny. We've got a captain there. We've got a captain, for all intents and purposes at the back. And sometimes when I was looking at Julian and Ayer does look like a leader. He does look like a leader. But, Duffy in there is your captain. Brown and McGregor play like captains as well. And, I think that's going to make a massive difference when we come up against them as well. Tony Hutton, welcome back. We have been kicked off the park on numerous occasions this season, and we're beaten, It almost gives them license, and I hope, as I say, that our experienced players, going back to what Kenny Wilson said there, our experienced players can get right on top of that referee from the kick-off. Now, Gary Doonan, welcome back to the show, Gary. Great to hear from you via Facebook. No support doesn't worry me. Our three worst games last season were all at home: Rangers, Cluj and FC Copenhagen in front of full houses. Yeah, you're absolutely right. What a disappointment all three games were as well. Stephen Kelly's coming in with a prediction, 5-2 to Celtic. Loads of goals. I can see there being goals in this game, Stephen. Joe Porter disagrees with the amount of goals and is going for 2-0. 2-0 Celtic. Tony Hutton wants 100% aggression from the kick-off, get right in their faces. Absolutely. And I also think that there's a couple of players in there, to name the obvious ones, Kent and Morelos, who, they've got discipline issues as well. Will both of them be playing? It's one of these things. I focus on Celtic almost exclusively at times like this. Jerry, you're saying that we're missing Mikey Johnson. Sometimes there's players that we do tend to forget about. I'm not saying we've forgotten about him, but it seems a long time since Mikey played. He's going to give us a great option out left. I think Salt's going to be the first choice out there. Mikey Johnson might take him a while. I'd love to see Mikey going down the same route as players like Ryan Christie and Paddy Klamala in relation to the conditioning that both of those players, there was almost a transformation in those guys that took them to another level. Klamala now is being mentioned in dispatches, should he start against Rangers. Could never have imagined that last season. Christie came back, saved his Celtic career, and a big part of that was down to the fact that he conditioned himself. So that's one thing I'd like to see with Johnson. I think that's maybe one of the reasons why he's had quite a lot of injuries. The other player that I used to say that about was Lewis Morgan. Far too easily pushed off the ball. Upper body strength had to improve. It didn't. And obviously he's away and he's doing very well, actually. Tony Hutton reckons it'll be 3-0. And we've also got Stephen Kenneth coming in. Celtic strength and depth will be a notable advantage. 3-1 to the Hoops. Now, today's Axon Bulletin was in many ways an extra. We don't normally go with bulletins unless we're playing at the weekend. So I hope you enjoyed that. It's been an absolute pleasure for me to engage with everyone again. The Celtic support is out in strength, and I hope everybody's all right out there, because obviously, with all the other restrictions that are kicking in, there's so many people being affected with that at home, in business, at work. So I hope everybody's all right, and we can all support each other through this as well. Looking forward to the Rangers game. I'll be back to you tomorrow for another short bulletin, so please get involved. I'm not sure exactly when. We normally go for 12:30, but everything's up in the air at the weekend, isn't it? With everything else that's happening. So thanks every single one of you for getting involved. Please follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and get subscribing to A State of Mind on YouTube. Until tomorrow, hail, hail.